Suicidality is not suicide.
It leads to suicide.
It can lead,
Statistically.
but most of the time it doesn't.
Well, that depends on what category of people you're talking about. When you're talking about gender dysphoric people who it's a pretty bad epidemic of suicidal ideation, and it's a pretty bad epidemic of people who are untreated who follow through with it.
Really? Do you have any data on that?
Not here, no, but you're welcome to go look it up.
Suicide I'm talking about.
Don't trust me. I would never ask you to trust me. I'm not a specialist in the field. Go look up data.
But you've read something about
I have, yes. I have
actual suicide.
Yes, actual completion of suicide. We also have data that says like if they do successfully cry, or not successfully cry, but they try it, and then they get gender affirming care, that their possibilities of trying again are significantly lessened.
So from what you remember reading, and again, I'm not asking you to provide any evidence at this point because that takes work.
Sure. Yeah, agreed.
Is it closer to one person in the United States in the year 2024? 10 people, 100 people, 1,000, 10,000?
All right. So you have to break it down because we're talking about people who are diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and I think that's a pretty small percentage of people, from what I recall. Less than 8% of the population of that group. I think it's somewhere in the realm of 25, 30, 40% ish are suicidal ideation.
That's not what I asked.
Which is a pretty right. Well, I'm getting to it.
Okay.
Suicidal ideation. And then there's some subset of population that tries once, tries twice, and or succeeds at any one of those attempts.
My question is, what's your gut, what's your intuition or your memory from the studies you've seen? How many people within that group with dysphoria actually committed suicide in the year 2024?
I honestly don't know the statistics off the top of my head.
Yeah, and my guess is no one does, because it is of that group. Some people have looked into it and have come up with numbers like 30 or 40 in all of the United States. And then you got to ask the question: did they commit suicide because of dysphoria, or did they commit suicide because they're in the sex trade, or that they have another condition, or that they are messed up with drugs? Did they commit suicide because of dysphoria or another reason? So it is very difficult. In my opinion, I think it's reckless to say, if we don't treat them, they're going to kill themselves. The data does not.
I don't think that's what anybody is saying. That's not what I said.
But you're implying it by saying that we can help them and it lowers suicidality.
Chances of following through with it. It lowers their chances of trying again if it's applied to them, after they tried the first time.
But there's no data to support that.
There is. You can look it up. Feel free to look it up.
So in order for one to say that it reduces the chances, you have to know reliably the actual death. So in other words, we have statistics of people who go through psychological evaluation are known to be suicidal and follow through with it and are successful to some degree because we've known it. Are there people who commit suicide and we don't know why it happened necessarily? Yes, sure. And I think Pierce mentioned this earlier, but in order to actually say scientifically, you would need 1,000 trans people with dysphoria and another 1,000 trans people with dysphoria, give one group gender-affirming care and don't give the other group any gender-affirming care, and then look at the actual suicides, the actual offing of themselves on both groups, and then you can say, yes, gender-affirming care lowered suicides. That scientific evidence does not exist because of what Pierce said earlier, because it is, one could say, immoral to run that test.
I mean, you can deny that data exists, but you can go look it up. It does exist. And look, I never claimed it was this mass epidemic of people. It's not it's a mass epidemic within a subgroup of people that is a small subgroup of people generally in the world. Just a massive occurrence of suicidal ideation.
But I'm asking about suicide.
Antisocial. Right. Well, again, you have to know someone. You have to basically know
psychologically, some way mechanism to know they were suicidal before they actually attempt it. Right. And that is possible. We do have that. We have that data. We don't know people who've done it and haven't been evaluated prior. We're making guesses at that point by what other people think about them, or maybe things they've written, things we can infer in their experiences in their life, but that's not part of the data generally.
How do you control how do you control for someone who says, I have suicidal thoughts, and they're using that as a manipulative ploy to get what they want?
I think that's all part of the psychological process. There's no guaranteeing that that's ever 100% the case.
It's
We don't
very
right,
wishy-washy, right?
Well, yeah, sure, but that doesn't mean we don't try.
And attempts.
This is what the psychological industry does, is it takes kind of statistical analysis as best we have. And yeah, it can be really, I mean, especially like for reasons I talked about, for history that we have, like these notions are not well studied. So they're very new and emergent. So we're still learning about them. But we do have statistics that tell us and inform us of successes. Yes.
And whether you mentioned suicidal attempts, even if a young teen female cuts herself,
Mm-hmm.
some could view that as attempted suicide, where another person said, well, no, they just cut themselves to either A, get attention, B, cry for help, C, maybe they like the pain and it's a way to
Sure.
solve another pain problem. So
Sure.
even so even attempted suicide can be very subjective. So
Well, again, I think you're conflating a lot of things there. Like you're really oversimplifying a lot of notions.
I'm a simple guy.
Yeah, I get it, and that's cool. I'm not judging you. Again, I don't need you to believe like I believe, but if we don't have data, where do you think these notions come from? We do have data. Is the data sufficient for you? That might be in question.
Yeah, and it's not sufficient for most of
fine.
society, I would say. And it's
Oh, well, I disagree. It's sufficient for me because it's the best. Again, like I was telling Pierce, it's the best measure we have. What else do we have beyond just ignoring people and their suffering and doing nothing about it?
here's another point I want to bring up about suffering, to change gears a little bit. I don't
Sure.
view all suffering as bad.
I never said all suffering is bad either.
Okay, so is there a certain amount of suffering within the gender dysphoria field that you're okay with?
Yes, because to live is to suffer in some way, shape, or form, whether, good stress, bad stress. Some people like to stress their bodies and go through a lot of suffering for their craft. Some, playing guitar is painful for your fingers if you play hours and hours and hours a day. But generally that's when, in psychology, they use the measure of how interruptive in your life is it? Like, what are these behaviors causing, a lack of functional ability in your life? That's where the line is drawn. Like, some people say, yeah, everybody's got depression. Well, yeah, but everybody doesn't have depression to the point where they just lay in bed all day long and don't go to work or don't talk to their loved ones and don't move, don't eat,
Yeah.
Not everybody has that level of depression,
So we're agreed there, I think. Like,
yeah.
I would say that 99.9% of all teenagers suffer going through puberty. That's just normal.
Sure.
I
did.
And another issue I wanted to bring up was, it's always gender affirming care, like certain procedures like HRT, puberty blockers, or surgery. I would love to see studies comparing other things, other techniques, like taking young kids out of all social media, out of all cities, putting them on farms and feeding horses. Now let's compare the results of how they feel.
Look, I don't disagree with you. I'm a more information, the better person. Like, I don't think there are studies we shouldn't be doing personally. Obviously, studies are constrained by a lot of our own societal barriers like money, finance, ability to make people to do them, qualified people to do them, yada, yada, yada. So there have to be gives and takes on what we can study, what we can't study. And again, that just falls back to me of like, if we know there's something going on and we know statistically we can help someone, even if it's all right, even if I concede that some of it is rocky territory, statistically, if it seems to help, until we know better, which is more research, why shouldn't we help versus not help? Why shouldn't we try to help?
Well, because sometimes you might be doing more harm than helping
Sure.
in the long run. And
Look, I can't deny that.
And even the
Yeah.
definition of help is so wishy-washy because, again, it's all self-reporting. With a broken arm, you can see it heal. With someone's internal psyche, it's not that easy. And so if someone wants to manipulate because let's say they're a white female who's a little fat, feels ugly, doesn't feel loved by their boys, not getting the attention from the father in the home or whatever, could be a desire to say, hey, I'm trans and get the attention that they seek. And so I think this is a real phenomenon. And so
It is.
you want to not do aggressive forms of gender affirming care if that's what's happening.
Again, I think, Pierce and I talked about a lot of this already, but regret, I understand in these decisions statistically is very low to the best we understand.
Yeah, I think that's BS.
Oh, that's possible. Again, statistics don't necessarily meet up to your standards.
Because and like this even the definition of who's trans, who has dysphoria has changed over the years, over the last few decades.
Sure.
And so a lot of these studies about the 1% is coming from like the 80s and 90s or whatever, and where the standard of being dysphoric was even much higher than today. Right now, in some places, if you walk into a clinic and say, I am struggling with my body and my mind, I have dysphoria, at that point, if you're giving them gender affirming care, you're doing malpractice because you should not affirm. A psychologist should not affirm. You should help the person explore their own psyche, their own psychology.
That's what affirming is. Affirming is not asserting or pushing or forcing. Affirming is like, I feel this way, it's okay to feel that way. Right? It's not, I feel this way, you shouldn't feel that way because you're in a boy's body, so you shouldn't feel like a girl. That's not what it is. It's like, I feel funny. I don't like the way I am. You're valid in those feelings. Let's work through them.
So you're saying gender affirming could include helping a young kid realize that they're not trans.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of it.
Yeah, very good.
Part of it is to weed out who is really having those true feelings and who is maybe confused about what they're feeling because of social pressures, or, there's a lot of conflicting social pressures out there that make people generally very confused about who and what they are. But still, again, the best we have is statistical analysis. I don't know of any better measure. Tell me what's better to measure by besides just saying.
I'm not pushing against statistical analysis, but if you're analyzing bad data, then you're going to have a bad analysis. I mean, you can analyze bad data.
Fine.
But
we know bad data exists too, right? Like even so much as there are counter studies with a lot of fucking bad data that misinform people about, I'd like to jump back to the example of this person in Pierce's video, this trans person who talked about a very painful upbringing and experience, but now is at a place where these things are working for them and they're happy and and man, they were so kind and sweet, even in tenuous areas of where I think maybe Pierce could have pushed some lines a little bit, but I understand you were just trying to represent a stance. But they were very genuine and generous with interpretations, said you're doing fine. And I agree. Like, I think all these are important discussions to have. We shouldn't not have them. That's all part of the learning process of this. But generally what I see is people who sit out on the outside of these things criticizing them because they don't like psychology. Maybe, I don't know, is it the replication crisis made you lose faith in some sciences? Is it, it's just viscerally uncomfortable for you to think about those things, and you have an understanding that a man should be a man and feel like a man, and a woman should be a woman and feel like a woman, and da-da-da-da-da. Is that what it is? I don't know.
No, I think you're right the first time I think society in general doesn't have a lot of respect for the field of psychology.
Yeah.
There's some things I think psychology is great, but once you start using it in the medical field to prescribe drugs or surgeries, then I think society in general takes a step back and says, well, how do we even know they're trans to begin with? We have to take their word for it, right? or we fill out a bubble questionnaire and talk to their friends and family or whatever, look at their behaviors. But really, maybe they're just a confused gay person or just unhappy that they're fat, or they're a male with narrow shoulders, so therefore I don't feel like I belong, and peer pressure and all this.
I think that's a mischaracterization, saying that we just have to accept the way they feel. I think that's a mischaracterization of what the psychological industry does with these people. It doesn't tell them what to be. It says, okay, here's a lot of reasons why you might be feeling these things. Let's talk about them. Not you should feel this way or you shouldn't feel this way, or we just don't know, so we're not going to do anything. Like that thing that we just have to trust people by the way they feel, I think is a misnomer.
Well, I think, I would love to test it. James Randi, he had that.
I do know James Randi. Yes.
Yeah, he had that competition where he would give $1 million if someone could do a certain extraordinary thing. So if I had 100 people, if I got 100, let's say 99 homosexual men who are very feminine, and in that group also, let's say 47 homosexual men who are very feminine, men meaning males, and 47 very butch masculine females, and 2 trans people who say they're trans. And I put those 100 people, and I call upon scientists from any field to you can't talk to these people. Find the 2 trans people in that 100. Could they do it reliably?
Oh, you can't talk to them?
No.
You just have to, you're okay. So you're just saying basically what you've been informed they are is what they like. You'd have to find them in that group. No, I don't think there's any
right. You couldn't
good level of success. Yeah. But that's the thing that discounts, like, if you're not accounting for the fact that these people are designating themselves as something, their self-identity, their autonomy.
But this is the reason why society has a problem, because you can identify a male based on, let's say, genes or a penis, or the lack of for a female, is more objective than what's your internal experience. And so this is the problem, that once you start prescribing drugs, medications, and surgeries for something that can be so easily manipulated, and society says, wait a minute, why don't we just wait till they become adults, their prefrontal cortex is fully developed, and then more libertarian about it and let them do what they want?
Can we go that route a little bit? Because Pierce and I talked about this earlier, right? And this is the fact that we have heavily sexually dimorphized areas of our brains, right? Generally, if someone is as orders of magnitude a male or a female, they will have certain characteristics of their brain that will align with them being male or female. We also have statistics that say if you don't feel comfortable as one of those 2 things, or the thing you are and you feel like the opposite thing, those brain features often are also reversed and reflective of the way someone feels. So there is biological evidence that says that these people have valid reason to feel the way they feel. Well, is it conclusive evidence? No. And is it causation? No.
I would say,
yes.
I would say that's bogus. And here's why. How do you tell the difference between a trans person?
Neurobiology.
I know. I understand exactly what you're saying, because
hard science. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but hear me out. How do you tell the difference between a very butch woman, masculine woman, and a trans male?
I mean, I don't personally. I don't try. Why would you? I take their word for it for the most part.
Exactly. You take their word for it.
Yeah.
That's the
so
problem.
Who knows you better than you? Who knows you better than you?
You think a teenage kid knows themselves well, whether they're trans or not?
Yeah. I think some do. I think people don't know themselves. Yeah. Well, here's the problem. I think a lot of people don't know themselves because of the outside societal pressures that are put on them. Like, no, you're in a boy's body. You should feel like a boy. That's the problem.
Yeah, I would say in general, most teenagers going through puberty are confused about their sexuality, their bodies. They're not happy. I
would call it natural. I wouldn't call it confused. I wouldn't call it confused. I would call it natural because we see these same things across multiple species in biology heavily.
Okay, so if it's natural, then having dysphoria is natural?
Yeah, well, the behaviors that align with gender dysphoria or non-gender conforming go across species, right? We obviously can't talk to them and say, "Hey, are you gay?" And get an answer back. But we have alignments of traits, characteristics, behaviors that align with these same features. Yes, it's mostly overtly understood as biological. Yes.
But I even asked you this earlier. Remember the 100 people and scientists have to figure who's who? You said, no, we couldn't do it. But are you saying now
Well,
we could?
I don't think you can because there's no conclusive evidence of those things. There are only evidences. There are no causation. Like because someone we don't know if the brain caused this, developed this way because they felt this way, or they feel this way because the brain developed that way.
Well,
We don't know the answer.
What I'm claiming is that in a group of 100 people, let's say you had only one trans person in there, you would be right 1% of the time. In other words, no greater than chance. Are you saying it would be better than chance to try to find that trans person in a group of
Yes, I asked
and then the male?
Yeah, by asking them what they feel.
No, you can't talk to them.
Well, that's what you're saying, but yes, that would be the next step. The next step would be like, no, I can't just arbitrarily look at somebody and say you're going to be trans because of these features or qualities. But we can talk to them and we can say I feel this way, and you know what? There's biological features that back that up, and there's traits and statistics that back that up.
That's only
psychological characterizations. Yeah, well, what isn't hindsight? I don't think we are anything but hindsight. 80 milliseconds of hindsight, I think, at the most.
No, it'd be like
or at the least.
When you have 100 people in a room and one has a broken arm and the rest don't, that's not hindsight. You can say, you run the experiments, you put x-rays in. Oh, that person has a broken arm. That's repeatable. We know it. You can't do that with things like sexuality. Well, even sexuality is easier than trans because you can show pictures of naked people and watch a penis rise or not. You can't do that with trans.
But again, we have data and evidence that inform us.
But I'm giving you evidence. I'm giving you reasons why we ought to doubt that data.
I don't say don't doubt it. I never said don't doubt it. I think skepticism as part of science is another thing that Ted Pierce and I talked about earlier. I never said don't doubt anything.
But you don't doubt it. But do you doubt it enough to say we ought not do certain procedures?
No, not if it's somebody's autonomous decision who's gone through the rigor of what we would consider medical practice today to get to those points. I'd say it's their own personal choice. If they're younger, it involves parental guidance, stewardship, doctors, all that kind of consent to make important decisions like that. We don't just go to Walmart and buy hormone replacement therapy.
Okay, so if a 13-year-old girl says she's actually a boy and wants her breast removed and the parents say no, both parents say no, but the girl says yes,
happens.
You're okay with that?
Okay, no, because like Pierce and I talked about earlier, there's a number of reasons why that emerged. You might just be bad parents. And that's a hard thing to determine. And it's a hard thing to determine whether kids are being abused and should be removed from their parents.
So earlier you just said it's a sort of like a group decision between the patient, the parents, and the doctors. Would there be bad doctors?
Guardians, stewards, whatever that is, yes.
Yeah, so we got bad parents, we got bad doctors.
Sometimes, yes. There are bad doctors, I admit.
Okay.
Yes, there are bad parents.
Would be
there are children who are going to make the wrong decision and have regret. Statistically, we understand the regret is small.
So why not just have the child wait till they're an adult and then let them do what they want?
Exactly. So we talked about this earlier. This is puberty. This is, okay, let's take two scenarios. We have someone who's gender dysphoric. We know statistically that with gender dysphoria, when your body goes through pubescent changes that you're not satisfied with, gender dysphoria gets worse, which is higher statistical cause for suicidality, depression, antisocial behaviors, yada, 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 right? That's a problem because people don't see it as normal. But we also have something called precocious puberty, which is something that happens in the cis world, that some child goes into puberty too early and starts to have a lot of social repercussions that we do treat with the same thing,
puberty blocking drugs to slow down the process. That's not a problem because that's cis aligned. The non cis normative one is a problem because it's non normative.
You're right.
Right. It
And
doesn't make sense.
does it make sense?
No, it makes no sense.
Yeah, to me, it does make sense.
Because you don't agree with the non-normative care.
No, because I gave this example in the chat earlier. Here's an extreme example that's not quite aligned with what we're talking about. But if a kid was born with 3 arms, we would do surgery to remove the 3rd arm because it's normal to have 2 arms, not normal to have 3. It is normal for a female to grow breasts. So that's why we don't remove breasts from a female.
And can we remove ghost limb syndrome?
Say it again.
Can we remove ghost limb syndrome if somebody doesn't want it?
You're talking about a person who has an arm but doesn't like it, and so we cut it off?
No, I'm talking about a person who had an arm or a leg removed and they still feel like it's there and and it's uncomfortable. Can we remove that phenomenon from their brain?
Well, if you go to drastic measures, you could do a lobotomy or something.
Maybe you'd be using just as loosely targeted mechanisms as someone who has gender dysphoria because we don't know the area of the brain necessarily that is 100% involving. I'm sure we have regions. I'm sure we have developments. I'm sure we have hormonal levels of influence, all those things, but it's a thing that can't be quantified like someone having a 3rd arm or a 3rd leg. It's apples and oranges, as Veronica said earlier. It's not comparing the same thing.
I don't understand your point by bringing that up.
You don't understand the point?
No, what's your point here?
Well, I think you're comparing apples and oranges is the point. You can't compare cutting off an arm to something that's going on in a brain that we don't have the ability to calculate or predict what features of the brain cause these behaviors, right? We only have statistics.
The only reason the only reason why I brought up that example is to show the difference between what's normative, what's normal, what's not.
I get it, but that's not an apples to apples comparison. Because some things are more overtly controllable like that and some are not. Just like gender transition surgery or sex transition surgery is more tangible in that sense, right? If I don't like my penis, I can cut it off. If I want a penis, I could have one fabricated from my biological parts. That's a more kind of tangible scenario than just not knowing why someone has gender dysphoria, even though they've said, I don't feel comfortable in my body and what my body is expressing phenotypically, which is only one small part of biology. It's just how our biology expresses. Does that make sense?
No, not really.
Yeah.
I can understand what you're saying. You're actually making the point I made earlier that being trans is basically taking someone's word for it from their internal experience.
That's part of it. There's also statistics about that.
Well, but those statistics are based upon self-reports.
All right. So let's think of some other hypotheticals like cannabis use as medical.
Sorry, I don't do hypotheticals.
No.
I'm kidding.
Well, that's basically what we were doing was a bunch of hypotheticals. I appreciate that. A little levity in the middle of things is sometimes good. Appreciate that. But yeah, look, man, some things are not. I don't know how to describe it better. There's a difference between soft sciences and hard sciences that can be calculated with mathematics versus one that the best we have is just we try to elicit what is the best honest feedback from people as we can. We try to use mechanisms like making those blind tests like Pierce was talking about, like making them anonymous, therefore not giving them judgment and any indication or influences why they should choose something over another because they have any fear of repercussions or what someone might think about what they choose. It's anonymous. It's a measure, a way of taking this information. Is it infallible? No, nobody ever said this stuff is infallible.
Well, it is getting better. I
agree. Yeah.
If you look at what's happening in the Western world today, extreme versions or forms of gender affirming care is being basically slowly not recommended or outlawed. They're basically saying the reward does not match the risk, and so therefore don't do it. Especially bottom surgery is basically illegal for teens, and even top surgery is now being cautiously not recommended, except for maybe in trials or whatever. So society, the scientific community is changing on this. The United States is actually lagging behind, but I predict they'll.
I mean, I don't know where you live, but like my personal experience is I have a male to female trans sister who's going through this right now. And, minus the fact that like Pierce and I were talking about, it's not easy as just saying, hey, I got a problem and I don't feel like who I am, so I want to have my penis cut off. It's just not that simple. It's a long, laborious, psychological, doctoral, medical process, years in the making to get to the point where you can legally have sexual transition.
You have a sister who's what? You have a
male to female trans, yes.
yeah. See, this gets to bias too. Like, and I'll just throw this out there. This is probably why you're passionate about this, is because you have a sibling who is going through it. But
Actually, I would say that's not true. I would say my passion comes from my understanding of biology and science, and like the fact that a lot of the areas where people question these things are things that are exhibited all through biology. Oh yeah, sure. Look, we don't talk right now. We're not talking anymore, and I don't know if that's going to change. But it has nothing to do with the trans.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Thing. So,
but I do think that can play a part if you actually care about someone who's going through this. But what we were talking about? Oh yeah, I was going to ask you. If you're not talking right now, I guess you can't answer my question. But I'm sincerely curious to know, how bad is this suffering? Like, if you are dysphoric, what does it feel like to not like a certain part of your body? Like, I can kind of resonate with it when I remember growing up in a teen, not liking my body, well, especially, get zits and stuff, and the hair starts to form, and you go, oh, this is ugly. But to me, that is not that bad. Like, what does?
Oh, right. But you didn't experience it, right? You don't know what it's like to not feel.
I know, but I'm trying to get at what is that like?
Well, that's interesting. I threw out an analogy earlier today, and it was something that gave me perspective on this whole thing. Like, I was telling a story about how I used to wear suits and ties going to work because it was expected. And I always felt uncomfortable, but I never really knew why. But it turns out it's just not part of my identity. I feel like I'm wearing somebody else's skin when I wear a suit and a tie. When I dress up in formal wear, I don't feel like myself. I know that's way oversimplifying the scenarios that they go through, and I can't understand it because I've never been through it, right? But it's a way for me to frame and understand. Like, I've even seen people on Reddit say things like, man, I would hate to wake up tomorrow as a man and feel like I'm a woman stuck in this body. That would really suck. I don't know what that's like, but it must really suck for someone. That's a level of empathy that I think a lot of people miss because they'd rather look at the fact that they haven't experienced it. So therefore, they're going to project their feelings, understandings, and judgment on the way other people should feel because the way they understand it. That's clinical. That's psychological projection. That's displacement of emotions. That's all kinds of clinical psychological behavior there.
Like, I work from home, and I hate wearing suits as well. But if I have to go into an area where it's socially acceptable or accepted that you need to wear a suit, I will wear a suit. I will play the part. I will play society's game, and I will wear a suit. And then my question is, why can't trans people do that?
Well, I think they do.
Okay.
I think many of them do, and they're forced to, and that's part of the problem, is like they want to be themselves. Maybe conforming is part of you. Conforming is not part of me. Like, if I had the choice, I would just, if I had to wear a suit or a dress-up clothes again, it would be too soon.
Depends how important it is to you. Like, if I want to get a job or whatever, then I'll play the game. But
yes, right. Well, I have to sometimes. I have to take alternatives that I don't. It's like one of my favorite sayings from Gladiators. Like, sometimes I do what I want to do. The rest of the time, I do what I have to do. That's like
a simple logic to say like, yeah, if I have to work and if I plan to keep that job, I have to dress this way. But just knowing that I was uncomfortable that whole time and given the option, I wouldn't fucking do it. Period. Like I'll leave people behind. I don't want to go to weddings. I don't want any of that shit. I don't want to go to funerals and have to feel the need to dress up. Period.
Do you think part of dysphoria is just basically not, well, it's of course not being willing or not being able to accept yourself for who you are?
Interesting. Well, so here, maybe I can give you another example. Like I grew up with a lot of neurodivergence and affects therein. Like I failed out of high school and, just failed school generally miserably and didn't do well. And I didn't choose to be that way. Most people blamed me. They were like, you're lazy, you're not trying, you're not committed, you're not, you're do it harder, whatever you got to do. Don't be how you are. And I'm like, I don't know how to be. It's not like I chose to be an outcast and I chose to be called stupid and lazy and all those things. That's not something I think anybody necessarily desires. Maybe some people with some deep psychological issues. So I think that's analogous. It's analogous to say, like, I didn't choose to be that way. So if there's something I can do to correct it, make my life better, qualitatively, quantitatively, social well-being, whatever you want to call it, then why wouldn't I go that way? Why wouldn't I at least try it? Especially if I'm suicidal, if I feel like I don't want to be in this world. I don't know. Look, I'm not a death phobe, right? I think death is part of life. And I think some people are just consequences of suicidality and just consequences of how they are, who they are, their behaviors, whatever. But I do think generally if we can avoid people from killing themselves, that might be a mistake and that might be regretted given alternative scenarios.
But I thought the reason why most trans people have suicidal thoughts is because they don't feel accepted by society.
I think that's part of it. I don't think that's all of it.
So in other words, if I were to give advice to a trans person, I would say, okay, if the reason why you want to commit suicide is because you don't feel society likes you, loves you, cares about you, whatever, fool them. Play.
I think also the same thing about themselves. They don't love themselves. It's not just society. Yeah.
Yeah. If that's the case, then I see it as using, when I say the word physical, I mean body, using a physical solution for a mental problem, which is, like you said earlier, comparing apples to oranges.
Well, I don't think there is a non-physical solution. Everything.
I know what you mean. I'm a naturalist, so I hear what you're saying there, but I'm still separating the brain from, let's say, the other parts of your body, and right now it seems like it's a form of conversion therapy. You're converting your body to match your brain.
Right, but conversion therapy in the kind of traditional sense known today is like other people trying to tell you how you should conform to your biology rather than you making your own autonomous choices to say, I don't like me, I want to do this differently. And I don't see that any differently than celebrities getting cis plastic surgery or enhanced breasts or, if somebody's got to get a dick extension or whatever the fuck they want. I don't see that as any different than someone who wants to make non-normative changes.
Yeah, and I'm libertarian on these issues. Like if you're an adult, but even I would say there's exceptions for adults too. Like if you're extremely autistic or mentally, am I allowed to say the word retard in this context? Society I think has an obligation to protect people from themselves. But in general, libertarian. If you want to get plastic surgery, whether you're cis or trans, go for it. But as going back to where we started, I wouldn't want my
trying to be entertaining, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't want my 13-year-old daughter to get breast implants or whatever, like or liposuction or just let's wait off a little bit. Your body's developing. Let's let the natural changes take its course. And then when you become an adult and if you make enough of your own money and don't expect society to pay for your surgeries, then go ahead, do what you want.
See, I get that, but that goes back to what we talked about earlier about early onset gender dysphoria, which is, it can arise at like ages of 3, 4, 5 years old. And then by the time you're 9 or 10, whatever, getting ready to go through puberty, those pubescent changes in your body make dysphoria worse, which statistically cause those other problems, suicidality, depression, blah, blah, blah. So that's what we're fighting. That's what is being kind of paired for, is that trap, that fall of
I don't buy that because like you said what 3 or 4 years old.
Some, yes. In some circumstances, it's known that kids are, generally uncomfortable. Do you know the story of John Money and the child who had the botched circumcision?
No.
Okay, so John Money was, I think, a psychiatrist, psychologist, psychiatric specialist from the 70s, 60s. I'm totally guessing here, so don't take me verbatim here. But this child had a botched circumcision and they mutilated a boy's genitalia. So John Money stepped in. I'm really kind of summarizing this, but said, why don't we correct them to be female and just raise them as female? By his best of his understanding, gender was just something that you could inculcate, indoctrinate, and be happy with. And nearly from the near term development of this child didn't feel comfortable in their body, and they felt like more like a boy than a girl. And now they live as a boy today, I believe. I don't know. Take that for what you will. I'm not trying to say that's clear, concise evidence of anything. I'm just saying that gender dysphoria can come on really early, and then gender dysphoria gets worse through pubescent changes that go the wrong direction that you don't want your body to go. So puberty blockers are there to delay that until you're old enough to make a more informed decision about how you want to live the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course it makes sense, but I would just say that the risk does not outweigh the reward because of all the issues we've already talked about.
Well, yeah, the suicidality is the risk and reward, and that is what's mitigated, and it's statistically overwhelmingly effective.
Yeah, and I'll be very blunt. I don't value that very much. Like if a kid says I'm suicidal, okay, join the long list. Like kids really suck at committing suicide. Really?
Yeah, I suffer from. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I suffer from suicidal ideation as well. I have my entire life.
So you're more at risk. I don't know how old you are.
54.
Yeah, you are way higher risk than any trans person of committing suicide.
Right, but that's me. Like, I'm not a trans person.
No, I'm saying you as a middle-aged white man.
Sure.
If you really cared about suicide, you would care about middle-aged white men.
I do.
They actually have the opportunity, the resources, and the drive to actually commit suicide. Young kids most of the time don't.
I care about all suicidality because it's close to my heart, because I feel it and I understand it from my own perspective. I don't know everybody else's perspective, but I can relate to what people go through. I also relate with pain that's unseen. A lot of people don't wear their pain and their suffering on their sleeves. They just go on with their lives and
You always
trudge on.
suicidal?
I have since I have ever known in my life.
You know what's caused it, or do you think you were born with it, or what's your theory?
I don't. That's a good question. So what I've uncovered in years of therapy and treatment is I have complex PTSD from abuse, from trauma from when I was young.
Yeah, and I appreciate you being.
But that's only part of it, because since I have known, I have been this way. So if there was abuse that occurred that I'm unaware of before I have conscious knowledge of experiences in my life, I don't know what those could be. I think there is evidences that I was abused at a young age that I don't necessarily remember.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to hear that. I really am.
Yeah.
But I fear that a lot of the suicidality within trans people might be for the same reason, not because they're born a certain way, but because of conditioning at a very young age by stupid parents.
I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think that's probably, I would lie more on the side of parents not being understanding when a child comes to them and tells them something and is confused about something. It's a parenting strategy to just say,
I'm talking about
you don't know what you're talking about. Well, abuse. All right, fine. Yeah. Well, abuse, an example of abuse is like, Dad, I don't feel like a boy. I want to be a girl. And Dad says, no, you're a boy. That's abuse.
See, I don't view that as abuse. Like if a dad says, hear me out. If a dad says that, and in his mind, the dad means male, the dad is speaking the truth.
Right. But the boy's obviously not talking about his biological sex, his phenotype.
Well, and
That's an ignorance, in my opinion. That would be a parent who doesn't understand.
right, but that's just all stereotypes. Like, what is a boy? A boy behaves a certain way.
It is. That's why a person knows best how and what they feel without other people's influence. And what should be happen is talk through those feelings. And that's generally what happens in a psychological setting. And hopefully parents are well informed too, to be supportive, caring,
Yeah, I would agree with you.
affirming.
I would agree with you. That's a bad dad if he said something like, boys only do these certain things. They only play with
Yeah.
trucks. They only wear blue. But if what the dad meant was, no, you're a boy because you're a male, then I would say, yeah, Dad, you're right on. You're spot on. You're telling your child the truth. But the dad should also say, it's totally okay, son, for you to play with dolls and wear pink. It's okay.
Yeah. It's also okay to not feel like you're in your body, like you're in the right body, right? It's okay to feel that way. What you do about it is a
I'd say,
whole
no,
other
it's not okay to feel that way. That's dysphoria, and dysphoria is a problem.
Right. No, it's okay. It's okay to feel that way. The question is what to do about it. Like, that's the affirming part of it, is no one can tell you what you're feeling is wrong. All we can do is work to find out if what you're feeling, if you really believe and feel what you're feeling, or if you're confused.
Yeah, I
And that's
understand.
generally what psychological settings are for, you know?
Right. Your impulsive feeling is not, it's out of your control. And so therefore we shouldn't blame people. I agree with you there, but it's still a bad feeling.
It's a bad feeling in the sense, yes, I agree that, you want people to feel comfortable with themselves. And, that's just, unfortunately, that's a utopian view. People are just not comfortable with themselves sometimes to varying degrees.
I also think
I'm not comfortable that I have this fucking lazy eye. I've hated it my entire life. Now I've come to accept the way I am. I could have had surgery to correct it. That's totally my choice that I didn't do that. I don't have I shouldn't be questioning somebody else's autonomous choice to have surgery or treatment to correct their body.
yeah,
Especially if I don't understand what it's like to be them, because I don't have those experiences.
you need lazy eye affirming care.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I kind of agree with that. I think gender affirming care puts a target on it as a political issue. I think it should just be medical care. If somebody has gender problems, they should be pointed to the right services to support them. Unfortunately, in today's world, that might translate to people who need gender affirming care not getting it. And I don't want that either. So I want people to have the care they need.
Are you in general trustful of, let's say, the pharmaceutical companies, the medical industry?
I'm skeptical of everything. Like, I'm anti-capitalist. I think a lot of our businesses and institutions are infected by profit incentive.
Okay.
And
So I'm going to use that.
Misguided. And yeah, but that doesn't mean that that's still like, what better options do we have at this point? Tell me what that is, besides just let people suffer.
Well, I'll answer that question, but I'm going to use your anti-capitalist kind of leanings to say that I think maybe there is a lot of gender affirming care with a profit motive in mind.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think we have evidences of that it does exist. But, we have the same kind of notions in every industry.
Right.
People who take advantage for money. But that doesn't mean we don't have the industries, unless they're controversial industries that deal with people's gender non-conforming natures. That's when it becomes political. We don't care that, like, some automobile manufacturer,
And so, and to answer your question now, though, about like, there's still real problems and how you fix them. I would love to run this experiment with you.
Okay.
You probably don't want to divulge where you live. You want to tell me what?
I don't mind. I'm on the East Coast of the United States, Maryland area.
Are you in a big city, or?
I'm outside Baltimore.
Okay. So you said you have suffered with depression most of your life? Yes?
Yes.
Have you ever lived on a farm?
No, my father grew up on a farm, so I have young experiences on a farm, but I did not grow up there.
Okay, so this is a very small chance this will ever happen, but I strongly encourage you to move wherever you are living at now go on a farm with animals, and if you don't feed those animals will die, and that's on you. Make that context a reality. Now live your life.
Well, hold on a second. I think you're making some assumptions.
Well, I'm assuming that this is
think we're-
possible.
Yeah. Well, you're making some assumptions that I haven't reached a place in my life where I've come to terms with these things and can manage them and am content with my life.
Okay, so you're not depressed right now?
Trajectory. No, that's absolutely not the case. I'm constantly depressed and I have techniques and tactics to manage that and keep myself out of wells of depression, but it's a constant battle.
Okay.
I have very, very poor self-esteem issues.
So your current techniques and
cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, recognizing when I'm being cognitively dissonant, trying to recognize. Of course, I fail sometimes. I have been through many processes of therapy of setting up crises plans. So when I feel suicidal, I know what steps to take. And when I'm feeling really depressed and starting to have aberrant thoughts, I can recognize it and start to tell myself different things.
But you realize what you're doing? You're using mental techniques.
Psychology.
Yeah, you're using psychological techniques to solve a psychological problem. You're not using a physical, when I say physical, I mean body, to solve a psychological problem. You're matching apples to apples.
That's not true because I'm taking antidepressants.
The typical trans-affirming care.
Antidepressants. Which statistically have a chance at helping depression. I think roughly 30%-ish, but not 100% guaranteed. And none of them have really managed my depression well. As a matter of fact, one of them, all it did was exacerbate early onset prostate issues. So
sucks to be a male.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is I would love a study, and I don't think this has ever been done, but maybe it has, where for severely depressed people to get off meds, to not even think about cognitive therapies, like you're not focused on it. You just live your life away from the normal. Like it's not normal anymore to really live on a farm and have animals depend on you and that sort of thing. And it would bring, my theory is, when you have deep hope, meaning, and purpose, it is really hard to be depressed at that point. Now, I could be wrong about that. You can maybe still somehow be depressed and have that. But I think animals do, in quotes, miracles for people's psychology. And even just,
I wouldn't disagree with
and just pure farming, like planting a seed and watching it grow and saying, I did that.
Right. But statistically speaking, as best we understand, these solutions don't have as good effects on people with gender dysphoria.
How do you know that if it hasn't been tried?
It has. I mean, I'm certain these therapies exist, right? That the touch grass phenomenon exists. Go out into nature, get yourself off of your phone. All these things, we know these things, and there are research studies.
I'm going to go back to your anti-capitalist leanings. The reason why I think they haven't really been tried a lot or suggested by, let's say, professionals in the field, because there's no money to be made in it for them.
Possibly some of it. That's the thing. It's not homogenous, right? When you're talking about capitalism, it's not all profit incentive. There are good capitalist businesses out there, heavy private investment that focus on a good thing to serve and provide. My attitude is most things that are successful in that end up being profit incentivized. That's just kind of it seems like a natural progression from having a good product to now trying to stay afloat with an idea that's maybe decaying or degrading. It's a bubble, if you will.
About 15, 20 years ago, I had a very close friend who got into the whole health craze thing, and I was overweight, and he said, "Hey, Doug, try these supplements and these protein powders and all this." And I did for a while, and it worked. Then I just did intermittent fasting, and that worked even better. And then he came up to me one day, and he was extremely honest, because then I started telling my friends about fasting, and and the benefits of it. And he said, but Doug, you can't make money through fasting.
Sure. Yeah. All right. So the point is that people like this exist, and ideologies, and yeah, sure. I can't deny that those things exist, but still we live with it. Like in every industry, why is this particular industry a problem where others aren't?
No. Anyhow, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I gotta run. What's your first name?
Yeah. Brian.
Brian, I'm Doug. Yeah, pleased to meet you. And thanks, Pierce, for
Nice.
having me on.
Thank you for the conversation. I appreciate it.